Well, we'll start off with our usual prayer for teacher and student. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one nourish us. May that one protect us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily disagree with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. This is Spiritual Seekers question answer. The question before us is, what is Shiva? Let me just make sure the quotation is actually correct. Oh, what is the meaning of Shiva? Okay, that makes a bit of a difference. Well, etymologically, of course, the word Shiva means the one who is auspicious. And so that requires quite a bit of expansion and understanding. The various periods in the Hindu religion can be split up into the Vedic period, the Brahmana period, the epic period, and so on. And in the most ancient Vedas, we only really find the word Shiva as an epithet, and it is associated with Rudra. And Rudra means the one that weeps. And of course, we have to understand that the early days of spiritual investigation were really not so much to do with spirituality, but to do with a sense of awe and wonder in all the forces of nature around us. You can imagine now, without the benefit of modern science at all, you come into a world and there's a moon that seems to expand and diminish. There's a sun that shines and is obviously the Lord of everything. There is a wind that blows and sometimes is in your favor and sometimes destroys. So you can see how ancient this Vedic tradition is, because they're taking all these natural elements and they are putting something extra in. Let us take, for example, if you get up early in the morning, then you will see before the sun rises, there's something called dawn. There's a coloring in the sky, a kind of announcement that something important is about to happen. And this is called Ushas in the Vedic tradition. The Vedas have various hymns to the hymn of dawn, and this is the one feminine aspect, the one goddess, if you will. The announcement of dawn, such a beautiful, the most beautiful feminine form that anybody has ever seen. But you see, it doesn't last because it's a kind of announcement and it breaks through into the sunrise. So a new character, as it were, comes on the stage. And so they saw everything in a wonderfully poetic way. And that gives us an extra dimension, an insight into the values of beauty and nobility and goodness, and something that is way beyond us, and gives a person a sense of wonder, a sense of awe. So when we look at these forces, one such force would be called Rudra. And Rudra is associated with the temperamental side of nature. And so suddenly weeping, suddenly laughing, that kind of thing. And when Rudra weeps, of course, I suppose we have rainfall. And when Rudra is angry, then we get a thunderbolt, lightning. All these forces are there. But the one characteristic about Rudra is wild, not tamed. And so Rudra represents nature in all its raw, essential, fundamental wildness. And the epithet Shiva gets applied so that Rudra really gets transformed, not only into Rudras, that is a number of Rudras, but also Rudra, one single entity. And there are, of course, 11 such Rudras. Why should there be 11 Rudras? Because in our own experience, we have 5 organs that give us a lot of information, 5 organs where we react from, and we have the mind. So we have 5, mind is 10, is 11. And so you'll see that the human person can be wildly temperamental or humbly compassionate. And the greatest axiom in the Vedic way of thinking is what applies to one person will apply to the whole universe. And so there's this beautiful stanza, the 10th chapter, 10th section of the Rig Veda, called the Purusha Suktam. That is, we see the whole universe as one grand person. And even the social structure comes from this person. Now, if we visualize this, the idea of creation goes away by itself. So there is a whole understanding of cosmology very different from the standard Western way of understanding how the cosmos works, starting with the beginning, a point, and going on in a linear way and finding an end somewhere. And when we do that, then we lose a wonderful glory. It was Carl Sagan who felt that Hinduism, in its cosmology, was very different and very much more accurate than, say, a biblical version of creation that began in 4000 BCE. Because it's like being on a Ferris wheel. You get on at a point, you go around, you get to a peak, and then you start diminishing, called old age, and finally there's death, but it doesn't end there. You carry on, and you can never get off this Ferris wheel unless you think differently, shift your thinking. Now you can see that Shiva, now being one who is auspicious, is also one who takes on the wildness of Rudra and is also the destroyer or dissolver. Dissolver because we're not talking about an actual universe. We're talking about an apparent universe that gets projected, Srishti, and Prajapati is the lord of all creatures. It comes out in the more modern version of Hinduism as the creator, the lord who creates, and Prajapati, one person, becomes many, many Prajapatis, subordinates, if you like, of one entity called Brahma. And that root means something that projects and expands infinitely, but it doesn't leave us with that. Just as there's a surge when the Ferris wheel starts operating, a dynamic surge takes place. It goes up, and there's a potential energy is there, and then it goes to kinetic energy somewhere else, and so it goes on. And so there's this energetic impulse that we call creation, but it's not creation from nothing. Because in this case, and it always has been, this entity makes the whole of the universe, the whole of the existence, the whole of the cosmos from itself, not from any secondhand material somewhere. It's not like a potter creating a pot from clay, because then you have an ad infinitum regression, an infinite regress about the clay. Who made the clay? Very often in these great debates with neo-atheists, this schoolboy question is, well, you say God created the world. Who created God? Well, that's a kind of childish point of view because nobody ever thinks that God is a created God. And you're going on a false infinite regress if you do that. So there's an impulse within a vast period of time that Carl Sagan once commented on, which goes into trillions and trillions of years. We are supposed to be living in the Kali Yuga, The Kali Yuga began in 3102 BCE, and it will go on for something like 432,000 years. The whole of the cycle of events, what is called the Mahayuga, will be something like 4.3 billion years. That represents one day of Brahma. One night will be double that, 8.6 billion years. And 8.6 billion years is, according to current thinking, twice the longevity of the Earth in the solar system, and about approximately half the longevity of the universe, according to current thinking. Current thinking postulates that there was some big explosion, some big bang that evened everything out with inflation and creates a universe that seems to be homogeneous and equal in all directions, is the theory. Recently, just for your information, the theory has gone into disrepute because the James Webb telescope has seen galaxies that are something like 600 million years after the supposed Big Bang, and nothing is supposed to have been created at that point. With huge clumps of galaxies. So clearly, the further we look, the less we're inclined to believe that the universe is isometric, or isotropic, I should say, and homogeneous. So maybe modern cosmology has to look at a different way of thinking. So we're dealing with an aspect of existence which says that there is a creator, Brahma. We call it creator for that for the time being, but it's more like Shasti, a projector. And what is he projecting, or it projecting? Projecting something from itself through the medium of word, Vak, according to the Vedas. But then you see there has to be something sustaining it. And of course, in the ancient Vedic days, these aspects were called Vasus, space. We have the Adityas that represent time, and we have the Vasus that represent space. There are, of course, 12 Aditis and 8 Vasus, because there are, humanly speaking, 8 directions: north, south, east, west, 4 cardinal directions, and 4 intermediate directions. And of course, the Adityas, there will be 12 in number, because, yes, we have 12 months in a year, no matter what system you take up, and there are 12 signs of the zodiac where we travel through a whole passage of events and times and situations and positions and so on. So all of that is represented ultimately. We can condense all that. Now, what about the Rudras then? The Rudras, the sense organs and the mind can either destroy you completely if you go along with the habit of thinking that there's some gap in me internally that has to be filled from outside. And then I continuously search for that. If I continuously search for that, I'll never find it. It's like looking for the Holy Grail and not finding it. Always looking, never finding. And so we have to shift our thinking. The other day there was a question answer session, with a group of people. That was on Monday. And one question that was asked was, you see, if there is a tapasya or there is discipline, how does discipline now relate to living in the present moment and being spontaneous? Well, you can't be spontaneously disciplined. I joked, you see, I said, well, I know a person who said, next week, next Friday, I plan to be spontaneous. I've scheduled some time for it. The point is that what we mean by spontaneity is not just a knee-jerk reaction to something, some circumstance. This living in the present moment is what is being encouraged, because this is where the truth lies. You can't say the truth is in the past, it's gone. It was truthful at some point, but now it's no longer existent. And the future has not yet arrived. So it's no good harboring anxiety for the future. That's not going to work either. Guilt and despair and depression regarding the past and regret and anxiety and stress in the future, it's better to center yourself in the present moment. Now, the same thing happens on a much larger scale, if you will, that the present moment is taken care of. So not only was there a projection, but there was a projection of only one thing that looked like the apparent universe. It just looked like that. And still looks like that to us because we can't really, in the normal scope of operation, we can't really see the subtle elements working beneath it. And so we have to shift our thinking and understand, by the way, we are born, no doubt. We are living, no doubt. The universe has a cycle of birth, no doubt. There's a cycle of operation, no doubt. But it also comes to a culmination. We can't think of it in terms of the cosmos because it's trillions and trillions of years. But our own life is a replication of it. And the life of everybody else and everything else is a replication of it. And so what happens in between, we have to be interested in. Something is born seemingly in one moment in time, according to our experience, dies at a certain moment in time. That's an inevitable thing, but what's going to happen in between? And we have to shift our thinking. Now, Shiva is a great example of the kind of thing that we need to do. Because within us are all these fundamental elements that we find everywhere in the universe. That is, I wish to exist. I never met anybody who says seriously, unless they're in serious depression, I don't wish to exist today or tomorrow or forever. No, I wish to exist, and furthermore, I can never imagine myself as non-existing. Somebody may say, oh, I had a dream that I was dead. Well, who was watching it? You see, you can't get rid of this observer. The observer is fundamental, and this is existence itself. We can doubt anything in the entire universe, but we cannot doubt our own existence. Existence is a fundamental thing, and it comes out in a psychological way. It comes out also in a physical way, that we wish to survive. Charles Darwin's Origin of the Species, Descent through Modification, the whole thrust of his thesis, if you will, on evolution, as we call it today, was that there is a natural selection going on. And natural selection is a kind of default position, a mysterious thing, which allows us to struggle in such a way that we continue to exist. And those that are most successful survive, and those who are not get eliminated. This is the process of natural selection. Unnatural selection we can do with dogs and horses and animals and so on. But natural selection is built in mysteriously into nature. And the problem is it applies to what we see, but it doesn't explain this first burst of life. Where does life come from? So something is sustaining us also, and something is sustaining us in a very deliberate way, resourceful way, and loving way. And we express this in our own human being through a relational aspect of our nature, so that we become loving people. We love other people, we love other things and objects also. That's okay. But it's not to do with survival necessarily, except that, of course, it can come out in the procreation, and the procreation of species become the most successful survivors. But apart from that, there's something additional. There's an emotional dimension that we have. We can call it the heart. And the heart, when expanded, is completely selfless. It has nothing to do with survival. Somebody that gives their life up, not just for somebody they know, that's genetic survival. That is genetic love. Even animals have it. But somebody that expands the heart and loves the entire world, that's something different. We can't imagine how the self-sacrificing people who we register as great people, great movers, great saints, we can't imagine why on earth they would go to these extraordinary lengths to push the boundaries of morality, not just for social survival, not because of a learned skill somewhere. These people will be truly selfless. So there is this aspect of us that comes through. But then what about Shiva? How does Shiva come across? Well, Shiva comes in the sense that we now have to shift our thinking away from basic survival, away from basic relational life, emotional life. That we have to apply some kind of discernment. We have to realize that in the beginning, when we all want great freedom, when we want an urge to develop in a spiritual life, largely stimulated by pain, we soon realize that the formula of struggle doesn't work. It doesn't create any fulfillment. Because basic philosophy that says that I want strength, I want to cultivate goodness, I want to be more loving, also carries with it the unconscious I'm not loving, I'm not strong, I'm not guided. Every positive is accompanied by an inherent negative. And that means we're not really going anywhere. Nothing is happening. A car reverses from a garage and goes back in, it doesn't go anywhere. And it raises a question. Are we simply a defective hollow or series of hollows that need to be filled and fulfilled? Or is there something more? And so we have a model to follow. That is a Shiva, an auspicious entity that is fortunate for us because we shift our thinking, we find the highest answers available to us. But it destroys all our attachments, it destroys all our suffering, it rescues us. We have a mythological story for it, yes. One of the most famous Vedic mythologies that comes to us really would be this churning of the Milky Ocean. Because the whole universe is seen to be a struggle of good and evil, light and darkness. And in the language of mythology, the devas and we could call them the demons or the ashuras, but ashura is really a misleading term. Ashura means that it is some supernatural entity, neither good nor bad, but all powerful, very powerful. But there is this struggle. There's a great struggle, seemingly, between Indra and Vrata. And we might put this into physics, if you will, a struggle between electrical energy and gravity. And this is going on, and without this struggle, we don't get a universe. There are some interpretations like that called Vedic physics. So the Milky Ocean is being churned. What is the expectation? That immortality can come out because everybody, whether it is gods, demons, supernatural beings, or otherwise, we all want to live forever. It is part of this urge for existence. We don't want this death. And so we cling on as much as possible, and with a realistic understanding, we won't get anything called immortality. But we have to do some churning. This churning is called tapasya. That means we have to generate heat, we have to go against our normal habit. And by doing that, we generate a nectar of immortality. And this nectar of immortality should spill over and so on. And we need to have the cooperation of all the opposite forces available to us. This is the way the universe works. Now, of course, there's a great danger because in order to churn, the axis that they're churning is Mount Meru. And unfortunately, because of the vigorous churning using Vasuki, as the churning rope. Unfortunately, it's creating some big, deep hollow, a deep hole in the earth. And so they have to appeal to Vishnu, who traditionally will save everything. And Vishnu, in his second incarnation, he comes, appears as a tortoise, and the whole rod is put on his back. But as they're churning, poison also comes out, because good things come out and bad things also come out. And this threatens to contaminate the whole of existence. Now, they can't call on Vishnu because Vishnu is tied up. Vishnu is being fully occupied. And so they have to call on Shiva. And we see Shiva comes, a wild nature. All the other deities are dressed in jewels. All the other deities are dressed in crowns. But Shiva is the hippie. Shiva comes wild. Shiva's wild nature comes with wild hair, naked, almost naked, just with wild animal skins around. And instead of having a garland of flowers, it necklaces the snake, representing power, Shakti, and ashes representing mortality. And he is the Mahayogi, he's the king of all the yogis. And he comes and unhesitatingly takes the poison, destroys the poison, and drinks it. And that leaves a small blue mark in his throat, and he saves the whole world. So we have this mythological story, this evidence, if you will, of a compassionate Shiva who saves us. So destroying our ignorance and destroying all the threats that we have. And Shiva, by himself, of course, devotees will see both the aspects of creation and the aspects of sustentation in Shiva. And if you're devotees of Vishnu, you will also see the same thing. But all are agreed that Brahma is the one who generates everything, because Brahma represents cosmic mind. And Shiva will represent the very, very force, the very spirit, the very dynamic aspect that supports and gives life to everything. Now we have Brahma, therefore, as a representative image of all existence. We have Vishnu as a representative of all pervading, all entering into everything, all protecting. Creator, if you feel that this world is a creation, then you'll see that this creation that is there will have a creator. And if you see this world as a protected field, then you'll see this Lord as a protector. And if you see this world as a play of waves, then you'll see the Lord as a player. And this is Shiva's other aspect, therefore. Not only destroy your ignorance through intense meditation, withdrawing you into your own world of inner truth, but also expressing through cosmic dance. And as long as the Damaru, the cosmic dance, is taking place, and the cosmic dance is doing it, which we call Nataraja, the world spins and vibrates. And the dynamic image of this is a small bronze statue. We can make it big. A big version of it sits outside the Large Hadron Collider there in CERN in Switzerland. And even scientists are happy to see this image, this dynamic image of this universal cosmic performer, because they see there that's exactly what they see happening. Atoms flashing, fires burning, radiation working, electrons and positrons meeting and annihilating each other, quarks being produced, mysterious things happening, all because this cosmic dance with a certain rhythm and a certain beauty is taking place. And when it stops, the universe stops. Why? Because the whole universe is Shiva. And this epithet of Shiva that was applied in the Vedas, it starts off as an adjective, a description. and comes out as a name. And so this is the Shiva who operates through power. For convenience sake and meditation, we can view this power in a feminine way. And so devotees of the Tantras will have Shiva and Shakti both. And Shiva and Shakti, when they merge and join, it becomes enormously powerful. Because the aim of Shakti is to get back to her beloved Shiva. And feeling that sense of separation, there's always an urge for this unity, like two lovers meeting. So this is the whole image of Shiva and Shakti. And so it provides, these three entities provide us with very comprehensive view of what is the projection, what is the sustentation, and what is the ultimate dissolution of what we have, bearing in mind that we do not philosophically take this world very seriously. We take this world as an appearance, what is called mithya. We take this world as simply apparitional causation. And this apparitional causation, separate from transformational causation, has to have some key components that we find in any mirage and in any illusion. That something has to be hidden from us. Magicians know this very well. They'll show something with this hand and they'll be doing something else with the other hand. Sleight of hand. They'll be diverting your attention away from something while something else is happening. And so this hiding aspect of it is called tamas. Tamas means a certain element of dullness and darkness. And then a projection has to occur. Some dance has to be there. Shiva does this dance. This is rajas. This is dynamic energy. And then sattva is a balancing aspect which has a revealing and illuminating capacity in it. These are called the three gunas, or the three evolutionary principles of the whole universe. But they bind us. And our job is not only to use them as we see fit, so that there is an overwhelming, well, even marginally, excess of sattva. And we have to have all three of these. Otherwise, we don't have a universe. The interplay between these three things makes for the universe in every single aspect that we can think of. Now you see, then we have to ask if there are these three expressions, let us call it creation, let us call it protection, let us call it play, then where will we see there's a dominance of these elements arising in order to perform these functions? Well, yes. So Shiva represents tamas, the hiding aspect of it. Don't forget, beneath the surface is a revealing thing, but externally, the hiding aspect. Mesmerizing us with the dance on the one side, and on the other side, giving us the opportunity to emulate the other popular figure of Shiva, and that is a meditating Shiva. We'll come to that just now. And then we have this projection. Clearly, the creative aspect, this is a projecting thing. This is Brahma. And then we have this preserving things, preserving a rhythm, which is Vishnu. Now we have these three gunas. So this is how the universe works. This is how our own individual life works as well. And how to get out of it, how to get out of the Ferris wheel. Well, we have to change our way of thinking. We have to think in new ways. And this requires some kind of tapasya or discipline. It requires generating an element of friction. And that friction means that we have to make new avenues somewhere. Swami Vivekananda puts it as if we were making new pathways in the brain. Of course, he was trying to satisfy physicalists in using the brain and mind interchangeably. And so new avenues, new streets. We are familiar with the old streets. It's difficult to choose and make another road, another street. And yet we will have to do that if we want to open things up and start new adventures. And so this is called spiritual practice. The Bhagavad Gita gives us three aspects of this practice, this tapasya. And this we find in the 17th chapter. I will come to that shortly. So, Shiva, the meditating Shiva, where do these figures come from? Where do these representations come from? We have to go back to the Vedic times again. When you see lightning, it seems like there's a thunderbolt, some weapon being held in the deity's hands. There was a time, you see, when Varuna was a supreme deity in the Vedic times. But Indra became even better. There must have been some drought, and Varuna was supposed to supply rain. And Varuna, of course, where does rainfall come? It comes essentially from the ocean. It is a play, a drama being acted where the heat of the sun brings up water vapor, and it all evaporates like that and condenses as rainfall. So some condensation never took place. And yet, despite that, we can't rely therefore on Varuna. But Indra came along because Vrata in the mythology stole all the rainfall, all the water. And now Indra comes and battles, and Indra holds the thunderbolt. And you see, so you say, Indra is the one that has rescued us from this drought. Now we have to take Varuna and bring him down and make him in charge of the oceans, and that's good enough, or at least the western portion of something, that's fine. Now Indra becomes the most praised deity in the whole of the Vedas. So these are these ancient stories which tell us something most profound. Now, how do we get our own abundance? Because rainfall provides abundance. We have to do that through a series of channeling our energy in our normal life in such a way that we are promoting an atmosphere within the mind of elevated joy, a new way of thinking, seeing what these ancient sages saw around us in nature and absorbing the glory. So what is spiritual life? It is the art and the sport of constantly tuning the attention into the glory of the self, or what religion, devout worshippers call God, doing it continuously. Whenever tuning goes away, bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. It's called Abhyasa Yoga. We do it through systematic training and control of this, control of the mind. That will lead us then to a condition where we can sit like Shiva. First of all, we have to learn to dance like Shiva. We have to adopt this wonderful free attitude, free movement. And then we have to adopt this meditation, this balancing aspect. Now, where do these images come from? Well, imagine somebody now sitting, trying to do some yogic practice, selecting a beautiful scene. We know how inspiring mountains are. Let us imagine sitting in a forest and in the background mountains. And these mountains are snow-capped. And as he's sitting there or she's sitting there, sees, I need strength. This is a wild place. But yet, despite all the changes I see, the mountain never moves. The mountain is solid. It is adamant. And I see the wonder of snow on the top of the mountain. And I see below, in the valleys, all these life-giving water. Where does it come from? It must come from the snow, melted snow up in the mountains. Something happened there, and a kind of descent occurred that gained momentum. And as it gained momentum, it gave life to animals and birds and beasts and man and fish also. And not only that, provided fertile soil for agriculture. The wonderful thing is a river. But where does it come from? It comes from the mountain. And if I look carefully, I'll see this mountain is not just something that is stuck there. Because it's an author of life, it must itself represent life. And perhaps then I can see a kind of cascade of water flowing down, a certain wildness of hair, a serene being, blue in color, and certainly wild, naked, natural, serene face, serene as the mountain itself, representing the ideal of meditation. And just as a mountain inspires an elevated way of thinking, then emulating its calmness and its peacefulness by simply sitting there, surrounded by nature and all the natural forces, and there in front of me, the strength of the mountain there. Now there's a policy, if you like, a law. Whatever we meditate on, that thing comes to us. If we meditate on strength, strength comes to us. Meditate on joy, joy comes to us. Meditate on bliss, bliss comes to us. And so you can easily see an almost triangular form of the mountain in an anthropomorphic way as the Lord Shiva sitting there. And by catching the glimpse of the meditator and the form that came out of the meditation, by in a counter way, taking that form and exploring the depths of it, then we get to the original thought of the meditator. It is quite easy to sit and to see the Lord's calm face, Shiva, with hair bound up like this, different from any other aesthetic, sky-clad. And we can see, instead of shaven head, we see the long hair of the yogi. And what happens instead of an umbrella, we find water springing from the hair in the form of the Mother Ganga, falling on the shoulders and then off into the valleys, giving life. And then we see how the Lord is the friend of all the things that we avoid. All the ghosts and ghouls will all be devotees and followers. All the hunchback people, all the people who are disfigured, you just come, it's okay, I'll take you on. We avoid snakes. Oh, the snake is my necklace, let it come on me. It represents Shakti, it represents a certain power. It's a coiled up thing that can uncoil. And let me hold a trident, whereby I see that the source of all these three evolutionary forces come from me, and I'm using them. And let me have Rudraksha beads around my neck. Rudraksha beads, kind of seeds from the Rudraksha tree. Rudra come from Rudra, see? And they have a natural hole in the center that can be strung and made into a mala. All of these things we can meditate on, and while we meditate, we come back to the primordial Shiva, the auspicious one, that represents all these functions, and come there, but even just by meditating on the face. Supposing I'm an artist, supposing I look at the face of Shiva or Buddha, and by the way, of course, as time goes on, Buddha's facial features and Shiva's facial features become the same thing. This is how Buddhism and Hinduism merge. Supposing I see meditating and I see the third eye opening, the eye of intuition, and I try to paint the face nicely, selecting all the colors, trying to see the shape of the eyes and the nose. That calmness, will it not come to me? All the qualities that Shiva has, will it not come to me? And then, of course, there are many, many mythological stories that surround Shiva and the life of Shiva, but all of them have this profound meaning. When we explore the mythological stories, these are not mere stories. when we look behind the story, we see, this represents that, and something else represents something else, and so it goes on. And so when we explore the myths of surrounding Shiva, then we get some profound insight as well. So this is all the meaning of Shiva. The original question was like that. And let me read it again. So what is the meaning of Shiva? Now there's something like an interesting aspect to this, if you want to call it like that. So Shiva, in the Devanagari script, if you change one small vowel and make it Shava, it means a corpse. And so Shiva is actually the one that saves us, raises us, gives us immortality, the conquest over death, and also allows us to be calm, just like a disembodied entity. It is the understanding of embodiment that is our own trap. So Shiva lives in the wild forest, surrounded by beasts and ghosts and ghouls, probably locates the cemeteries, is wild like his antecedent, if you will, Rudra, and is a great, great ideal for many, many devotees to contemplate this particular form, which we call Shiva. I hope that answers your question.
I have a question and join a little bit this previous question. It's relating to the snake that Shiva has around his neck. Is it related to the Kundalini as well, which is as well with a snake, or is it related to something else? Like, because it's a representation. So, is there something to reflect with humans?
Well, yes, certainly. As I mentioned previously, the snake represents the coiled up power that unfolds with what we call the serpent power, or what John Woodruff called the serpent power. And if we take it further, we can go along with the tantric ideas about it. And that is why Shiva and Shakti have become tantric terms. Tantra simply means a technique and embraces a whole wide range of practices and outlooks, but primarily says that we don't have a world denying approach. We can have a world affirming approach by using the raw materials that we have. And so the tantric approach will be that you take this world as a dynamic expression of the divine. Now, what moves it would be an aspect of this divine, one side of the coin, which is dynamic energy. This dynamic energy, of course, we find everywhere. There's no scientist who will describe or tell you what is energy. We only know it by its effects. But there's only one energy, and that is divine energy, variously called. Yogis call it prana, tantras call it shakti, and the Vedantins will call it, conditioned Brahman, let us say, Apara Brahman, and that kind of thing. They'll call it Prakriti, they'll call it nature. The Sankhya's will call it Prakriti. And Vedantins will call it Maya. These are alternative terms for the same thing. So when Shakti arises through discipline, through various practices, then it unfolds for us the whole levels and glories of the mind, the psyche, like going up a mountain, if you will, like going up an elevator with the elevator itself as Shakti. And as we go from floor to floor, we see new things and new horizons until we get to the top. So yes, this image of the snake around the neck has several meanings. First meaning will be this dynamic energy. But another meaning will be that we should have no fear about anything, because Shiva will allow snakes to crawl all over him without being disturbed at all. Why? Because his attention is withdrawn into meditation. So you see, every aspect of every icon has to be meditated on to get the value from it. You can't simply dismiss it. It is the same with every other icon as well. The cleverness of the iconography, whether it is in the form of statues or pictures or paintings, is significant. And every religion takes it on board, more or less, other than the Protestant version of Christianity and the Muslims. But even the Muslims will have this calligraphy and represent paradise on the external part of their mosques in terms of flowers and leaves and fountains and water and so on. What is the significance of Shiva Ling? Well, linga means a sign, an indicator, an indication. Shiva is supposed to live on the top of Mount Kailash. He is Mahadeva and lives on top of Mount Kailash, and Mount Kailash is shaped in a certain way. Now you see, how do you tell, supposing you have 2 3-year-olds, one a boy and one a girl, and you sit them in a bath, how do you tell which is male and female? So there's a sign. One has a sign, the other one doesn't. And so this is linga. Linga means a sign. And so this is the meaning. And Shivaling means because we cannot see the absolute as represented mythologically on the top of Mount Kailash, we have to take the mountain itself. We have to take the sign or the signal. And so Shivaling represents that. Now, of course, if we are devotees of Shiva, then the whole capacity for creation and preservation is contained in the same entity. And so there is a Shiva who procreates the whole world and does it through Parvati. And so the two together, in other words, the potential energy evolves, as it were, into kinetic energy, and that evolves into radiation and then electromagnetism, and you and I to sit here with the capacity to speak and discuss it. And so this is a wonderful representation of this creative function which is there. Okay, so thank you. All right. We finish off then. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. All right. Shivaya Namaha.